Marcus Sullivan thought he'd found his soulmate in the vibrant streets of Manila, until a manila envelope filled with photographs shattered everything he believed about love, loyalty, and the woman who called him her forever. What he discovered about Sophia's secret life would force him to question whether the nightmare every expat fears isn't being deceived, but realizing that survival and love can wear identical masks. Marcus Sullivan never expected his morning coffee to change everything. The steam rose from his cup as he sat in the busy Manila cafe, watching people rush past on the crowded street outside. 6 months in the Philippines had taught him many things, but nothing prepared him for what was about to walk through that door. She entered like sunshine breaking through storm clouds. Her black hair caught the light as she looked around the cafe, seeming lost. Marcus found himself standing before he realized it, walking toward this stranger who somehow felt familiar. "Excuse me," she said, her voice soft but clear. "Do you know if this cafe has good internet? My phone died, and I need to contact my office." Her English was perfect, with just a hint of an accent that made every word sound like music. Marcus felt his heart skip as he looked into her dark eyes. "I'm Marcus," he said, extending his hand. "And yes, the Wi-Fi here is excellent. Would you like to sit with me? I was just working on my laptop." She smiled, and Marcus felt the world shift slightly. "I'm Sofa, and thank you. That would be wonderful." As Sophia settled into the chair across from him, Marcus couldn't help but notice how she moved with natural grace. She wore a simple blue dress that brought out her eyes, and when she laughed at his joke about the slow Manila traffic, he knew he was in trouble. "What brings you to the Philippines?" Sophia asked, typing quickly on her phone after connecting to his Wi-Fi. "Work, originally," Marcus replied. "I'm a software consultant. But honestly, I was running away from a divorce that left me feeling like I'd forgotten how to be happy." The honesty surprised him. He rarely shared personal details with strangers, but something about Sophia made him want to tell her everything. "I'm sorry," she said, her eyes showing genuine concern. "Divorce must be very painful." It was. "But being here in this crazy, beautiful city has helped me remember that life doesn't end when one chapter closes." Sophia nodded thoughtfully. "Manila has a way of healing people, I think. The energy here, the warmth of the people. It can make you believe in new beginnings." They talked for 2 hours. Marcus learned that Sophia worked for a marketing company, that she loved old movies and spicy food, and that she had a laugh that made him want to spend the rest of his life making her smile. When she had to leave for a meeting, Marcus felt panic at the thought of never seeing her again. "Would you like to have dinner tomorrow?" he asked quickly. Sophia paused at the cafe door, her hand on the glass. For just a moment, Marcus thought he saw something flicker across her face. Surprise, maybe, or calculation. But then she smiled, and whatever he'd seen was gone. "I would love that," she said. The next evening, Marcus waited nervously at a restaurant in Greenbelt. He'd chosen a nice place, but not too fancy, somewhere that felt comfortable rather than intimidating. When Sophia arrived wearing a flowing yellow dress, she looked so beautiful that Marcus forgot his own name for a moment. "You look amazing," he said, standing to pull out her chair. "Thank you," Sophia replied, her cheeks flushing pink. "You clean up pretty well yourself." Dinner flowed like a perfect dream. Sophia told him about growing up in a small province north of Manila, about her dream of traveling the world, about how she'd worked her way through college while supporting her family. Marcus found himself sharing stories about his childhood in California, his failed marriage, and his hopes for starting fresh in a new country. "What made you stay in the Philippines?" Sophia asked over dessert. "Honestly, I was planning to leave after 6 months. But now," Marcus reached across the table to touch her hand. "Now I'm thinking about what it would be like to build a life here." Sophia's eyes widened. "A life here? That's a big decision." "Maybe. But for the first time in years, I'm excited about the future instead of just trying to escape the past." They walked slowly through the mall after dinner, neither wanting the evening to end. Marcus bought Sophia a small orchid from a flower vendor, and she tucked it behind her ear with a smile that made his chest feel tight with happiness. "I have a confession," Sophia said as they stood outside the restaurant. "I wasn't really looking for Wi-Fi when I came into that cafe yesterday. Marcus felt his heart skip. No, no. I saw you sitting there, looking so serious and handsome, and I wanted an excuse to talk to you. So I turned off my phone and pretended it was dead. The admission made Marcus laugh with relief and joy. You mean you orchestrated our entire meeting? Guilty, Sophia said, looking embarrassed but pleased. Was that terrible of me? It was brilliant, Marcus said, pulling her closer. Absolutely brilliant. Their first kiss happened right there on the sidewalk, with jeepneys honking and people walking around them. It was perfect and awkward and everything Marcus had hoped for. When they broke apart, Sophia was smiling up at him with eyes that seemed to hold starlight. I should probably get home, she said reluctantly. Can I see you again? Tomorrow? Marcus asked, not caring if he sounded desperate. Tomorrow is Sunday. Would you like to go to the beach? I know a beautiful place in Batangas, not too far from the city. Marcus would have followed her to the moon if she'd asked. That sounds perfect. As he watched Sophia's taxi disappear into the Manila traffic, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Real, pure, uncomplicated hope for a future that suddenly looked brighter than anything he'd dared to imagine. He walked back to his condo with Sophia's perfume still lingering in his memory and her phone number saved in his contacts. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. But as Marcus fell asleep that night, he didn't notice the 3 different phones charging on Sophia's bedside table in her apartment across the city. He didn't see her carefully writing his name and details in a small notebook filled with similar entries. And he certainly couldn't have imagined that their perfect first kiss had been photographed by someone watching from a car parked across the street. In his dreams, Marcus was already planning their future together. But some futures are built on foundations more fragile than they appear. The beach in Batangas was everything Sophia had promised and more. Marcus stood in the warm sand, watching Sophia laugh as small waves splashed around her ankles. She'd worn a simple sundress over her swimsuit, and with her hair loose in the ocean breeze, she looked like something from a travel magazine. The water is perfect, she called, gesturing for him to join her. Come on, don't be scared. Marcus rolled up his pants and waded in, gasping as the cool water hit his feet. Sophia immediately splashed him, and he retaliated by sweeping her up in his arms, spinning her around as she shrieked with laughter. You're impossible, she said, but her eyes were sparkling with joy. They spent the morning building sandcastles like children, competing to see whose would survive the incoming tide longest. Sophia's elaborate fortress, complete with seashell decorations, outlasted Marcus's simple mound by several minutes. I demand a rematch, Marcus declared, pulling her down onto the sand beside him. Maybe next time, Sophia said, lying back and closing her eyes against the sun. This is perfect. I feel like I could stay here forever. We could, Marcus said quietly. I mean, not literally here on the beach, but we could have this. Weekends like this, moments like this. Sophia opened her eyes and looked at him seriously. Is that what you want? Really? More than I've wanted anything in a long time. Something shifted in Sophia's expression, a flicker of what might have been guilt or sadness. But it passed so quickly that Marcus wondered if he'd imagined it. I want that too, she said softly. They had lunch at a small restaurant overlooking the water, sharing plates of grilled fish and rice while Sophia told him stories about her family. Her mother was a retired teacher, her father drove a jeepney, and her younger brother was studying engineering in college. They sound wonderful, Marcus said. I'd love to meet them sometime. Really? Sophia seemed surprised. You want to meet my family? Of course. They're part of you, aren't they? Sophia reached across the table to squeeze his hand. Most foreign men I've met aren't interested in that part of dating a Filipina. They want the girlfriend experience without the family complications. Well, I'm not most foreign men, Marcus said. I want all of it. The whole package. That afternoon, as they drove back toward Manila, Sophia seemed quieter than usual. She stared out the window at the passing countryside, her phone buzzing repeatedly in her purse. Everything okay? Marcus asked. Yes, sorry. Just work messages. My boss doesn't believe in weekends. But when her phone rang and she answered, Marcus caught fragments of conversation in rapid Tagalog that sounded more personal than professional. He heard what sounded like his name mentioned several times, and Sophia's responses seemed tense, almost defensive. "Sorry about that," she said after hanging up. "Family drama. My brother is having trouble with his girlfriend." The explanation felt reasonable, but Marcus noticed that Sophia's hand was shaking slightly as she put her phone away. Over the next 2 weeks, they fell into a routine that felt surprisingly natural. Dinner dates, walks through Resall Park, lazy Sunday mornings at Marcus's condo watching movies. Sophia had a key to his place now, and finding her coffee cup in his sink in the morning made him happier than he could explain. But small things began to nag at him. Sophia's phone was always face down when they were together, and she never let him see her messages. She worked late frequently, often canceling plans at the last minute with apologetic texts about urgent projects. And sometimes, when she thought he wasn't looking, Marcus caught her studying him with an expression he couldn't quite read. The first real warning came from his neighbor, Dave, an Australian expat who'd been in Manila for 5 years. "That's a beautiful girl you've been seeing," Dave said one evening as they shared a beer on Marcus's balcony. "Sophia? Yeah, she's amazing. Just be careful, mate. I've seen a lot of guys get in deep with local girls who turn out to have complicated situations." Marcus felt defensive. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing specific, just that things aren't always what they seem here. Beautiful women, especially ones who speak perfect English and seem to have fallen hard for foreign guys. Sometimes there's more to the story. "You don't even know her," Marcus said, irritated. "You're right, I don't. And I hope I'm wrong. But I've seen good men get their hearts broken because they fell for someone who was playing a longer game than they realized." That night, Marcus lay awake thinking about Dave's warning. It seemed ridiculous. Sophia was genuine, sweet, clearly falling for him as hard as he was falling for her. But tiny doubts began to creep in. Why had she been so interested in his work, his income, his plans for staying in the Philippines? Why did she always seem to know exactly what to say to make him feel special? The next morning, Sophia arrived with coffee and pastries from his favorite bakery, wearing one of his t-shirts over her jeans. She looked so perfectly domestic, so naturally beautiful without makeup, that Marcus felt foolish for doubting her. "I've been thinking," she said, curling up beside him on the couch, "about what you said about wanting to meet my family." "Yeah. Would you like to come to dinner this Sunday? My mother has been asking about you." Marcus felt a surge of joy and relief. This was what real relationships looked like, meeting the family, being integrated into someone's life. Dave's warning seemed paranoid and unfair. "I would love that," he said, kissing the top of her head. "Just, my family is very traditional. They might ask a lot of questions about your intentions." "What kind of questions?" Sophia seemed to choose her words carefully. "About whether you're serious about me. About your plans for the future. They worry about me getting involved with someone who might leave. Then I'll tell them the truth, that I'm falling in love with their daughter and I'm not going anywhere." Sophia's smile was radiant, but Marcus noticed that she immediately reached for her phone when it buzzed, stepping into the kitchen to take the call. He could hear her speaking in urgent Tagalog, but when she returned, she simply said it was work again. Sunday arrived faster than Marcus expected. He spent an hour choosing what to wear, settling on khakis and a button-down shirt that looked respectful but not too formal. Sophia picked him up in a taxi, looking nervous in a way he'd never seen before. "Are you sure about this?" she asked as they wound through the narrow streets of her neighborhood in Quezon City. "Of course. Why wouldn't I be? It's just, my family can be a bit overwhelming, and they're very protective of me." The taxi stopped in front of a concrete compound surrounded by high walls. Sophia paid the driver and led Marcus through a metal gate into a courtyard where several families seemed to be sharing the space. Children ran around between laundry lines while adults sat in plastic chairs, watching the new arrival with undisguised curiosity. "Kano," Marcus heard someone whisper, followed by rapid conversation in Tagalog. Sophia led him to a small apartment where the smell of cooking filled the air. A woman who was clearly Sophia's mother appeared in the doorway, her face lighting up when she saw them. "Mama, this is Marcus," Sophia said in English. "Welcome, welcome," her mother said warmly, though Marcus noticed her eyes were studying him carefully. "I am Rosa. Please come inside." The apartment was small but immaculately clean, with religious pictures covering one wall and family photos arranged on a shelf. Marcus was introduced to Sophia's father, her brother Diego, and what seemed like a dozen cousins, aunts, and uncles who had appeared for the occasion. The dinner was delicious: adobo, rice, and several dishes Marcus couldn't identify but enjoyed thoroughly. The conversation flowed in a mixture of English and Tagalog, with Sophia translating when necessary. Everyone was friendly and welcoming, but Marcus could feel them evaluating him, weighing his every word and reaction. "So, Marcus," Rosa said during a lull in conversation, "Sophia tells us you work with computers?" "That's right. I'm a software consultant. I help companies improve their technology systems." "That must pay very well," Diego said, earning a sharp look from Sophia. "Ido okay," Marcus replied carefully. "And you like it here in the Philippines?" asked one of the uncles. "You're planning to stay?" "I love it here. And yes, I'm thinking about making it permanent." The family exchanged glances that Marcus couldn't interpret. Sophia's hand found his under the table, squeezing tightly. "That's wonderful," Rosa said. "Sophia deserves someone who will commit to her, not just play around and leave." The pointed comment made Marcus realize this dinner wasn't just about meeting the family. It was about proving his intentions. "I care about Sophia very much," he said. "I would never hurt her." As the evening progressed, Marcus began to feel more comfortable. The family was warm and genuinely interested in his life back in America. But he also noticed things that seemed odd: expensive electronics in an apartment that otherwise looked modest, designer clothes hanging in a bedroom he glimpsed through an open door, and conversations that stopped abruptly when he approached. After dinner, Sophia walked him around the neighborhood while her family cleaned up. They held hands in the humid evening air, past sari-sari stores and sleeping dogs. "That went well," Sophia said, but she sounded nervous. "Your family is wonderful. They really care about you." "They do. Sometimes too much." Sophia stopped walking and turned to face him. "Marcus, there's something I need to tell you." His heart skipped. "What is it?" "My family. They've been through some hard times recently. Money problems. My father's jeepney broke down and repairs are expensive. My brother's tuition is due next month. And my mother." Sophia's voice broke, and Marcus pulled her into his arms. "What about your mother?" "She's been having health problems. Diabetes complications. She needs tests, maybe surgery, but we can't afford it." Tears were streaming down Sophia's face now. "I've been working extra hours, taking on side projects, but it's not enough." Marcus felt his heart breaking for her. "How much do you need?" "Oh no," Sophia said quickly, pulling back. "I'm not asking you for money. I would never do that. I needed someone to know. I've been carrying this alone for so long." But Marcus was already reaching for his wallet. "Sophia, let me help. How much does your mother need for the tests?" "Marcus, no. We barely know each other. I can't let you." "Yes, you can. You can let me help because I care about you. And that means I care about your family too." Sophia's tears came harder now, and she buried her face against his chest. "You don't know what this means to me." "What you mean to me?" As Marcus held her in the warm Manila evening, surrounded by the sounds of a neighborhood settling into night, he felt a deep satisfaction at being able to help the woman he was falling in love with. It felt right, natural, the kind of thing partners did for each other. He didn't notice the curtain moving in a window across the street, or the figure watching them from the shadows. He didn't see Sophia's quick glance at her phone as they walked back to her family's compound, or the barely perceptible nod she gave to someone Marcus couldn't see. All he knew was that he was exactly where he wanted to be, with exactly the person he wanted to be with, finally feeling like his life in the Philippines was becoming something real and meaningful. The money transfer would go through the next morning, and with it, Marcus would cross a line he didn't even know existed, entering a game whose rules he had never learned, played by people who had been practicing much longer than he could have imagined. The envelope landed on Marcus's doorstep like a bomb waiting to explode. He almost stepped on it rushing out for his morning jog, but something made him pause and pick up the manila package with no return address. Inside his condo, Marcus tore it open and felt his world collapse. Dozens of photographs spilled across his coffee table, images that made his hands shake and his stomach turn. Sophia laughing with a gray-haired European man at an expensive restaurant. Sophia holding hands with a younger guy who looked Australian, walking through a luxury mall. Sophia kissing someone who definitely wasn't Marcus outside a five-star hotel. But the photo that destroyed him showed Sophia counting a thick stack of money outside a Western Union office, smiling like she'd just won the lottery. A single note was paper-clipped to the final image. She's playing the same game with 4 other men. Check your bank account. You're being robbed blind. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. Good morning, my love. Can't wait to see you tonight. Made your favorite adobo. Miss you so much. The sweet message now felt like poison. Marcus grabbed his laptop and logged into his banking account, his fingers trembling on the keyboard. The numbers made him dizzy. In 6 weeks, he transferred nearly $8,000 to various accounts. Money for Sophia's mother's medical bills, her brother's tuition, emergency repairs for her father's jeepney. $8,000 that had apparently funded shopping trips and dinners with other men. His phone rang. Unknown number. Marcus Sullivan. The voice was American, tired, familiar in a way that made Marcus's skin crawl. Who is this? James Patterson. I dated Sophia for 4 months last year. We need to talk. An hour later, Marcus sat across from James in a coffee shop in Makati, studying a man who looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past 12 months. James was maybe 40, with the hollow-eyed look of someone who'd learned hard truths about trust and love. She told you about the sick mother, right? James asked without introduction. Marcus nodded, his throat too tight to speak. Same story she gave me. And Robert, the British guy who was here before me. And probably the German she's seeing now. James pulled out his phone, showing Marcus screenshots of bank transfers. $12,000 I sent her over 4 months. For medical bills that don't exist, family emergencies that never happened. How do you know they don't exist? Because I hired a private investigator after I found out about the others. James slid a business card across the table. David Mitchell. He's very good at following cheating girlfriends. Following them where? Hotels, mostly. Restaurants. Shopping centers. She's got a rotation, different men on different days. Weekends are apparently reserved for you. Lucky guy. Why are you telling me this? Because I was where you were 6 months ago. Convinced she loved me. Convinced we had something special. James's laugh was bitter. You know what the worst part is? She's probably not even lying about needing the money. She just gets it from multiple sources instead of one. That evening, Marcus sat in his condo, staring at his phone. Sophia had called 3 times, sent a dozen messages asking if he was okay, saying she was worried about him. The concern in her voice sounded genuine, but now Marcus questioned everything. His doorbell rang. Through the peephole, he saw Sophia standing in a hallway holding a bag of takeout food, her face creased with worry. Marcus? I know you're there. Please open the door. What's wrong? Marcus opened the door. Sophia immediately threw her arms around him, and for a moment, he let himself sink into the familiar warmth of her embrace. I was so worried when you didn't answer my calls, she said, pulling back to study his face. You look terrible. Are you sick? We need to talk, Marcus said, stepping aside to let her in. Sophia set down the food and turned to face him, her expression shifting from concern to wariness. She had the look of someone who'd been through this conversation before. What's wrong? She asked, but her voice was carefully controlled now. Marcus walked to the coffee table where the photographs still lay scattered. Sophia's eyes found them immediately, and he watched her face cycle through surprise, denial, and finally resignation. Where did you get these? She asked quietly. Does it matter? Sophia sank onto his couch, her hands covering her face. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the air conditioning and the distant noise of Manila traffic. How long have you known? She finally asked. Since this morning. But I should have figured it out weeks ago, shouldn't I? Sophia looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. It's not what you think. Then explain it to me. Explain how these photos show you with other men while you're telling me you love me. Because I need the money. The words exploded from her with such force that Marcus stepped back. You want to know the truth? Fine. Yes, I'm seeing other men. Yes, I'm taking money from all of you. You know why? Because my family is drowning in debt, and this is the only way I can keep them alive. So you decided to con multiple foreigners instead of getting help the honest way? The honest way? Sophia laughed bitterly. What honest way? Working 60 hours a week at call center for 15,000 pesos a month? Watching my mother die because I can't afford her insulin. She stood up, pacing to the window. You make more money in 1 month than most people here make in a year. You complain about your $8,000 while that's more than my father will earn in his entire lifetime. That doesn't justify lying to me, doesn't it? Sophia turned back to him, her eyes blazing. You came to this country looking for a beautiful, grateful woman who would make you feel like a hero. I gave you exactly what you wanted. The accusation stung because it contained enough truth to hurt. I came here looking for love. No, you came here looking for someone who would love you without complications. Someone who would be grateful for your rescue. Even if that's true, it doesn't excuse what you've done. I know. Sophia's voice broke. I know it's wrong. I know I'm hurting people who've been kind to me. But Marcus, I have a choice between being a good person and keeping my family alive. Every day, I have to choose between my conscience and survival. So you chose survival. Every single time. She wiped her eyes, smearing her makeup. And I'll keep choosing it until I find another way to make enough money to support the people I love. Marcus stared at her, really looked at her, and saw not the woman he'd fallen in love with, but someone who'd been slowly destroying herself one lie at a time. What happens now, he asked. Sophia gathered her purse, checking her phone as she did. Marcus noticed 3 missed calls from different numbers. Now you decide whether you can love someone who does terrible things to survive, she said. And I go have dinner with Klaus, who thinks I'm his devoted girlfriend. She paused at the door. For what it's worth, Marcus, I do love you. Maybe not the way you want to be loved, but it's real. The problem is, I love staying alive more. After she left, Marcus sat alone among the scattered photographs, understanding that he'd been asking the wrong questions all along. It wasn't whether Sophia loved him. It was whether love could exist alongside systematic deception. David Mitchell's office looked exactly like what Marcus expected from a private investigator, cramped, cluttered, and filled with surveillance equipment. Mitchell himself was a weathered man in his 50s who moved with careful precision. You sure you want to see all of this? Mitchell asked, gesturing to a thick folder on his desk. Some men prefer not to know the full scope. Marcus nodded, though his stomach was already churning. Show me everything. Mitchell opened the folder and spread out surveillance photos like a grim photo album. Sophia Reyes, 26 years old. She's been running this operation for approximately 3 years, with increasing sophistication. The first batch of photos showed Sophia with men Marcus had never seen, a Japanese businessman, an elderly American retiree, someone who looked like a young backpacker. How many? Marcus asked. Currently active relationships? 7 that we've documented. You, the German Klaus Weber, American oil executive Robert Shun, British consultant Timothy Morrison, Australian mining engineer Paul Davidson, Canadian retiree Frank Dubois, and a rotating spot for short-term targets. Marcus felt dizzy. 7? How does she manage 7 relationships? Very carefully. She's got detailed schedules, different phones for different men, even different apartments. Mitchell pulled out what looked like a calendar. Mondays, she's with Klaus. Tuesdays with Robert. Wednesdays with Timothy. You get weekends because you're the biggest spender. Biggest spender? Her operation isn't random. Marcus, it's a business with market segmentation. She targets different types of men for different amounts. Retirees get smaller amounts, but more consistent. Businessmen get expensive dinners, shopping trips. Younger guys like yourself get the rescue the beautiful local girl fantasy, family emergencies, medical bills. Mitchell pulled out bank records. In the past year, we estimate she's collected over $200,000 from various sources. The numbers were staggering. Marcus realized he was just one revenue stream in a much larger operation. What about her family? The sick mother, the struggling brother? Real family, real problems, but significantly exaggerated. Her mother does have diabetes, but it's manageable. Her brother is in college, but on scholarship. The money she collects has lifted her family into comfortable circumstances, but they've all become dependent on the income. Marcus stared at a photo of Sophia's brother wearing expensive sneakers. They're all in on it, to varying degrees. The family provides authenticity, real people you can meet, but they become addicted to the lifestyle her work provides. Mitchell pulled out his laptop and showed Marcus a video file. This was taken 2 days ago. The footage showed Sophia at a restaurant with Klaus, the German businessman. Marcus watched her laugh, touch his arm affectionately, gaze at him with apparent adoration. It was exactly the same way she looked at Marcus. She's performing, Marcus said, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. Exactly. Watch this. Mitchell played another video, showing Sophia with the British consultant Timothy. Again, the same laughs, the same touches, the same expressions. She's developed a repertoire of behaviors that make men feel special. Each guy thinks these gestures are unique. Marcus felt sick watching Sophia perform intimacy with surgical precision. Sophia isn't working alone. There are at least a dozen women running similar operations throughout Metro Manila. They share information, coordinate schedules, even trade clients when someone becomes too suspicious. Mitchell showed him photos of Sophia meeting with other young Filipinas, all beautiful, all dressed expensively. They call themselves international relations specialists. It's become a legitimate career path. What's the end game? Do they ever actually marry their targets? Sometimes, but marriage complicates things legally and limits earning potential. Most aim for long-term relationships with multiple men, maximizing income while maintaining flexibility. What do you want me to do with this information? You could work with us to document the full scope. We're building a case that could shut down the entire network. Marcus felt a chill. What kind of case? Immigration fraud, tax evasion, organized deception targeting foreign nationals. The Philippine government takes this seriously because it damages the country's reputation. And what happens to Sophia? Prison time, probably. Her family loses their primary income source. The whole operation collapses. You want me to destroy her life. I want you to help stop her from destroying other men's lives. Right now, she's probably grooming new targets while maintaining her existing relationships. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. Missing you so much today. Can't wait to see you tonight. Love you more than words can say. What would you need from me? We're a wire to your next few meetings. Get her to admit what she's doing on recording. You want me to trick her into confessing? I want you to give her the opportunity to tell the truth for once. That evening, Marcus sat in his condo waiting for Sophia. He'd hidden Mitchell's recording device in his shirt pocket, though he still wasn't sure he'd use it. When Sophia knocked, Marcus almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. He needed to see if he could spot the performance now that he knew what to look for. Sophia entered with her usual radiant smile, but Marcus noticed things he'd missed before. The way she quickly scanned his face for emotional cues. How she positioned herself to appear vulnerable. The careful modulation of her voice. You seem tense again, she said, studying him with professional concern. Another bad day at work? Marcus realized this was his moment. He could get her to reveal information about her other relationships, help Mitchell build his case. The recording device felt heavy in his pocket. Instead, he found himself asking, Sophia, do you ever get tired of lying? Her smile faltered for just a moment, and in that instant, Marcus saw past the performance to the exhausted woman underneath. Every single day, she said quietly, but tired doesn't pay the bills. The honest answer surprised them both. Marcus realized that maybe the most radical thing he could do wasn't to expose Sophia's lies, but to finally ask her to tell him the truth. The question was whether either of them was brave enough to handle whatever that truth might be. The departure lounge at Ninoy Aquino International Airport hummed with the familiar chaos of a country built on goodbyes. Marcus Sullivan sat in the uncomfortable plastic chair, his boarding pass to San Francisco growing damp in his palm as he watched families embrace. Businessmen checked their phones, and overseas workers carry boxes wrapped in shipping tape toward gates that would take them back to jobs in distant countries. He'd been sitting here for 2 hours, but his flight wouldn't board for another 3. The extra time wasn't an accident. Marcus had arrived early because he needed to think, to sit with the weight of everything that had happened in the past week since his conversation with Sophia about the truth. The recording device David Mitchell had given him lay and used in his carry-on bag. After Sophia's admission that she was tired of lying, Marcus had made a choice that surprised even him. Instead of gathering evidence for Mitchell's case, he'd spent the following days simply observing, watching Sophia navigate her complicated world with the clear eyes of someone who finally understood the game being played. He'd seen her rushing between appointments, checking multiple phones, carefully managing the emotions and expectations of men who believed they were her only source of love and support. He'd watched her count money in her car after meetings, her face a mixture of relief and exhaustion. Most telling of all, he'd observed the moments when she thought no one was looking, the way her shoulders sagged with the weight of constant performance, how she practiced expressions in her reflection on store windows, the mechanical way she applied lipstick before each encounter. Sophia wasn't a predator, Marcus realized. She was a person who had learned to survive by becoming what others needed her to be, until she'd forgotten who she actually was underneath all the performances. 3 days ago, he'd sent her a simple text. "I'm leaving the Philippines on Friday. I wanted you to know." She called immediately, her voice sharp with panic. "Leaving? Why? What happened? Did I do something wrong?" The questions themselves revealed everything. Her first concern wasn't losing someone she loved, but losing a revenue stream she depended on. Marcus felt something settle in his chest, a kind of clarity he hadn't experienced in months. "You didn't do anything wrong, Sophia. But I can't be part of this anymore." "Part of what?" "Marcus, I don't understand." "Yes, you do. And that's okay. I understand too now." There had been a long silence on the phone, filled with the ambient noise of Manila traffic and the distant sound of Sophia breathing. "Are you going to cause problems for me?" she'd asked finally, her voice small and careful. Marcus had considered the question seriously. He could call Mitchell, provide testimony, help build a case that would destroy Sophia's operation and send her to prison. He could expose her to the other men she was seeing, watch her carefully constructed world collapse in real time. He could make her pay for the months of deception, for the money she'd taken, for the way she'd made him question his own judgment and worth. Instead, he'd found himself saying, "No, Sophia, I'm not going to cause problems for you, but I'm also not going to fix them anymore." The distinction felt important. Marcus wasn't choosing revenge or rescue. He was choosing to step away from a situation that required him to be either a victim or a savior, neither of which reflected who he wanted to be. Now, sitting in the airport surrounded by the controlled chaos of international departure, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced since his divorce, a sense of his own agency. For months, he'd been reacting to loneliness, to Sophia's needs, to the intoxicating feeling of being needed by someone beautiful and desperate. He'd mistaken that feeling for love, when what it really was the temporary relief of not having to figure out who he was on his own. His phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. "I know you probably hate me now. I know I destroyed everything good between us. But I need you to understand that when I told you I loved you, I meant it. Maybe I don't know how to love someone without also needing them to save me, but what I felt for you is real." Marcus read the message twice, then put his phone away without responding. Sophia's feelings might have been real, but they existed within a framework that made authentic relationship impossible. She loved him the way someone might love a job that paid well, genuinely grateful for what it provided, but ultimately bound by economic necessity rather than free choice. The boarding announcement for his flight crackled over the loudspeaker, but Marcus didn't move. He thought about the conversation he'd had with Dave, his Australian neighbor, the night before leaving. "So you're really going back?" David asked over beers on Marcus's balcony. "Yeah, I think I've learned what I came here to learn." Which was? Marcus had considered the question. That running away from yourself doesn't work if you bring yourself with you, and that trying to fix someone else's problems won't fix your own. Dave had nodded approvingly. A lot of expats never figure that out. They just keep moving to new countries, finding new versions of the same problems. I almost became one of them, Marcus had admitted. If Sophia had been better at hiding what she was doing, I might have married her, brought her back to the States, spent years trying to understand why she seemed so grateful but never actually happy. What changed your mind? Realizing that I was attracted to her desperation as much as her beauty. It made me feel important, needed, like I was the hero in someone else's story. But that's not love. That's just ego with better marketing. The memory of that conversation grounded Marcus as he finally stood to join the boarding line. He'd spent his time in the Philippines learning to distinguish between being needed and being loved, between rescue and relationship, between the intoxicating rush of fixing someone else's problems and the slower, more difficult work of building a life based on choice rather than necessity. As the line moved forward, Marcus noticed a young couple ahead of him. Clearly American, probably in their 30s, the man wearing the slightly overwhelmed expression of someone encountering Manila for the first time. The woman was beautiful, Filipina, holding his hand with the kind of careful attention that suggested either new love or practiced performance. Marcus watched them without judgment, understanding that their story might be different from his. Some relationships that began with economic inequality and cultural difference managed to evolve into something genuine and mutual. But he also understood now that hope wasn't enough, that love required the possibility of authentic choice from both people, and that choice was impossible when survival was at stake. The gate agent scanned Marcus's boarding pass, and he walked down the jetway toward a plane that would carry him back to a life he'd been running from. But he wasn't the same person who had fled to Manila 8 months ago. The man boarding this plane understood something his younger self hadn't. That healing happened not through finding someone to save or be saved by, but through learning to sit with yourself long enough to figure out who you actually were when you weren't performing for anyone else. As the plane taxied toward the runway, Marcus looked out the window at the Manila skyline disappearing into the distance. Somewhere down there, Sophia was probably preparing for her evening appointment, checking her appearance in a mirror, mentally rehearsing the right combination of vulnerability and affection that would maintain another relationship built on carefully managed need. He felt sorry for her, not the condescending pity of someone who thought himself superior, but the genuine sadness of recognizing someone trapped in a cage of their own making. Sophia had learned to survive by becoming indispensable to people who couldn't see past their own loneliness. But in doing so, she'd made herself unable to experience the kind of love that didn't require constant vigilance and performance. The plane lifted off, carrying Marcus toward a future he couldn't yet imagine, but was finally ready to meet on his own terms. He thought about the empty apartment waiting for him in San Francisco, the job he'd need to find, the friends he'd lost touch with during his months of emotional exile. None of it would be easy, but all of it would be real in a way that his life in Manila had never been. As the Philippines disappeared beneath the clouds, Marcus understood that the nightmare every expat feared wasn't being deceived by someone who didn't love them. It was losing yourself so completely in someone else's story that you forgot you had agency to write your own. The man returning to America was different from the one who had fled there, not because he'd been loved and betrayed, but because he'd learned to recognize the difference between connection born from strength and connection born from mutual desperation. He discovered that the most radical thing you could do when faced with someone else's survival strategy was neither to rescue nor condemn them, but simply to refuse to participate in a system that confused love with transaction. Marcus closed his eyes and let the plane carry him toward whatever came next, finally free from the weight of trying to save anyone, including himself, through someone else's affection. The real work of becoming whole would happen alone, in quiet moments, through the slow accumulation of choices made from clarity rather than need. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, that prospect didn't frighten him. It felt like coming home to himself.